So thank you for coming. We're here to welcome everyone. We're very excited to have everyone here. We're tapping into a couple of few problems that are consistent across the manufacturing and construction industries, and we're going to focus on why digital transformation starts strong but often stalls. Despite huge promise around automation, AI, data, and digital tools, many organisations still find themselves stuck in trials, pilots, and partial adoption. Today we're exploring why that is and why leaders must prepare for 2026. I'm joined today by two leaders who see different sides of the challenge. Martyn Kenneally, Head of New Product Development at Silo, where the complexity of design, coordination with clients, heavy manufacturing, and complex integration offers a real look where digital workflows succeed or break down. And Neil Hodson, Digital Strategy and Transformation Consultant, who advises organisations on why change efforts stall culturally, operationally, and at leadership level. I am Phil Fitzgerald. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for AI Centre, and welcome. And in absence, we're going to have another speaker today, Dr. Cliff Burton. He sadly injured himself through skiing, and we wish him well.
It's going to be a bit cramped on here, wouldn't it?
Okay, so to both of you, to set the stage in one sentence each, what's the number one reason digital transformation stalls in construction and manufacturing?
I think if I look at it from my side, having spent 20 years in both FTSE and working in, they don't work, do they? Having spent 20 years in FTSE 100 and in the last 6 years in startups, I think the biggest thing is communication. It's leadership, communicating clearly around the change, but also understanding why the change is needed. I think too often leadership take a very high-level view, and that doesn't always translate through the organisation.
So I need to agree with Neil, unfortunately, and it's about, it usually stalls because the problem or the issue that people are trying to solve hasn't been fully understood, and so your company or leadership are bringing in a tool or a technology to try and fix this perceived problem that actually isn't the problem, and then all that ends up happening is that technology amplifies the problem further and just makes it much, much worse. I can speak from first-hand experience. That's happened many, many times.
Sounds interesting. So Martyn, you sit in a really interesting intersection. Designers, contractors, fire compliance, manufacturing, all coordinating around something that's deceptively as simple as a doorstep. Where do digital workflows break down most often across that chain?
So Silo, we make fire doors, which should sound really simple, but we make it incredibly complicated. But we try and get involved in the whole chain. So we'll try and work with architects to get specified, with contractors, subcontractors, and then we manufacture and go to site as well. So we have quite a broad spectrum of what we see. And from my viewpoint, it really breaks down at the interfaces. So if you've got the chain of design, and we start at an architect, they have complex models, BIM models, which has lots of data, lots of information in there, fantastic. But once it leaves the architect, that data stream breaks down very quickly into much more manual processes. So it's very common when you have 2D drawings, Excel spreadsheets, annotated photos, and it's an area where error can crop in, a lot of rework happens. So we might get a door schedule and drawings, and they've been remade 10 times. There's so much rekeying, re-information that goes into it. So it's not the tools that break down, but it's not really a consistent data stream from the top of the chain to the architect to all the way down to the factory, to the manufacturer.
I think if I can just add to that, the last company I was in last year was a construction tech company, and very often, whilst you can put the technology in, the information isn't shown at the earliest stage or shown to all people, and it can break down between the concept and the delivery side of things. And often when we're onboarding people, it's like, oh no, they don't need to see that. So I think there's a lack of understanding within some of the industry that by sharing information earlier, by having a consistent way of presenting that information and getting the feedback at the earliest point, you can actually remove errors further down the line. Let's face it, within construction, rework costs are a significant cost of the industry. And the more you can show, the more you can share earlier, you can get the feedback, not just from the conceptualizing of the design, but actually from the people who are then going to have to deliver it, because it doesn't always work.
Okay, so much of new product development is lost managing document changes, compliance evidence and coordination tasks. Do you see a role for automation or AI-based assistance in reducing that burden?
Yes, I do. I think one of the biggest areas for technology, and specifically around AI, is around automating those more basic tasks. There are a lot of tasks that, if you look at the return on investment between the hours spent and the output to the bottom line, that's significantly low. I spoke to somebody last week, and they had an instance where they'd done an upsell. It took them 50 minutes to try and put the upsell into the system. Now, all this should be linked together. There are so many tasks that are labour intensive but low impact to the business as a whole. And I think too often these are the areas that need to be looked at first. Instead, a lot of people try and put more technology over the top before the basics are actually in place. I think that if you look at a lot of industries and people you work with, and if you don't sit down with your teams and understand what takes them a long time with very little output, then when you start putting a new project in on top, they just see that as another problem they're going to have to deal with. Sorry.
It's fine. So yes, and at CELO, we implemented a solution which was like a knowledge-based chatbot. So we had a big issue that, because we sell fire-rated products, so it means we need to test those products, and there are standards for what that product is, and there's standards for how to test that product. Then we get our test report. We then need a field of application report, and there's, in the standard documents, they refer to other standards. So each product, there is a huge amount of technical documentation linked to that product, and so customers primarily ask us more and more complicated questions as our customers understand standards better as well. And I was finding my team were spending an hour, 2 hours a day having to dive through all these different standards when we had customer questions, so we could give them the correct answer to their questions. So it was just, a huge amount of time that they should have been working on our projects was spent doing this. So by having this AI knowledge bot, we were able to put all our data into it in terms of all the different standards, and with some training, it was then a tool that the customer service team, sales team could use when they had an email from customers or customers on the phone, so they could very quickly come back to them with that answer, rather than us needing to stop working, spend 30, 60 minutes sometimes looking for that answer. And it was really transformative for us. Yes, it was brilliant.
So in your industry, digital tools are often introduced to simplify work, yet they sometimes end up adding layers of complexity. From your perspective, what are the underlying reasons this happens?
I think it comes back to something I touched on earlier. I think the biggest issue around implementing new technology is often the decisions about where to implement it are taken from a leadership perspective. Often it's dealt with as a technology project and not an operational change to an operating model. From those sides of things, you then end up with a lack of clarity out into the business. If leadership don't engage as to the reason behind the change within there, then the people working in that organisation don't understand where it's coming from. They see it as another thing being implemented on them, not with them. And I think if there's clarity, if there's a roadmap drawn out as to what the reason behind that change is, first of all, it gives teams the ability to come back and go, well, hang on a minute, you are seeing this from an exec level, but actually that's not the real problem that we've got. You're trying to fix a problem that's 3 layers up, when actually our data's not aligned, our processes, we don't have process clarity, and by putting more technology on top of that, that just creates more chaos. And if the teams don't understand it, they're not going to be part of it. It's something being done to them, not with them. And that's the biggest thing that I've seen going through businesses. The more clarity in that change that you can put in place and have those discussions across each level of the team, then you'll get the realism back. You'll understand what it is, and the team can then understand how it's going to help them, because everybody's got drivers. You've got your personal goals, you've got your career goals, you've got your business goals that you want to deliver. And if they can see how a change is going to help them, then they'll get far more engaged and help that move through. But whilst leadership keep making changes from what they perceive to be the problem rather than the real problem, then we'll keep running into problems.
So I think most of us can probably think that how often have you been asked to use a new tool at work that's going to simplify a process or make your life easier, but it feels like you're managing the tool. It's like, well, how does this work? I think a lot of time, kind of again reflecting what Neil said, it's not really getting down to the root cause of the problem, your bottleneck, your issue with processes, and just jumping on okay, let's throw in this new tool that we think will improve it, and then it just amplifies the process and it makes it much worse and more complicated. I've experienced this at CELO. We were, when I first started, technology zealots. Excel was just like as high tech as we went. So all our project management was in Excel spreadsheets. It was terrible. And the MD was like, okay, I've got this bit of software. We're going to use this for project management. And it was unbelievably complicated to use. To just manage really simple projects, it took longer. Everyone hated it, so no one used it. So I was constantly the bad guy. Use the software. And it was just, we didn't understand the problem we were trying to solve. So this shiny piece of software was completely incompatible. Where if we'd taken just a little bit of time to better understand, okay, what's our actual issue here, and then look for the right solution, it would have saved a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of grief that I got.
Always start with the end user.
Yes.
Yeah.
So where do leaders overestimate the organisation's readiness, and how should they diagnose that?
I think a lot of leaders look at their organisation, they see that they've got systems in place, but they don't understand that the state of their data, their processes, and the ability for their organisation to absorb change. And I think one of the basic principles is if they can talk to the people doing, I'll say this from a leadership viewpoint, but doing the work rather than conceptualising, then they can understand the state of their organisation far better than perceiving they know exactly where it is and how it operates. And it's only really when you understand whether you've got data fragmentation, whether you've got unclear processes that people can't follow. If you try and automate things that already don't work and people are running lots of offline systems and workarounds, then you are just going to add another layer of chaos to what's already chaotic, and people are spending an awful lot of their own time trying to work ways around something that doesn't already operate. And then you're trying to add more technology on top of it to try and do what? Effectively, what are you trying to solve? You're just causing more problems and more chaos.
Yeah, I think it's that disconnect between the people that make decisions and the people that actually do the work. Mm-hmm. And it's that disconnect of not understanding, making an assumption, but not understanding what's actually happening. So one set of people are trying to solve problems that the other set of people aren't experiencing.
Yeah. I must admit, when a number of years ago, I got drawn into a new sales system project. and it was the sales directors who scoped it. And the day we went live, absolutely no one could do anything because they had absolutely no real ground level experience of what people did. And I think I'll put my hand up and say, yeah, that was a screw up from my side, but it was a good learning experience, and we've never done it again.
I think we've coined a new term, shadow chaos.
Yes.
So, we're now moving on to the cross-panel portion of the event. And I'd encourage you to challenge each other.
We'll try, but we get on quite well.
So
those sumo suits. Huh?
No, we could. So across design, manufacturing and on-site delivery, where is the greatest misalignment causing transformation to stall?
Good question. I'd say it's at the intersection of design intent, compliance and budget. And what we normally see is that what's designed isn't compliant, what's compliant doesn't meet budget, and the solution of those two problems then achieves nothing. It's difficult. And I think that's where you get the issue, and kind of, in my personal opinion, where it really benefits is having all that information gathered at the start of the project with digital tools that can kind of spot those issues when they're coming. So this thing that you created, or it's over budget, or we've got compliance issues there. Unfortunately, we get lots of calls when our product has been installed on site and the building is about to be handed over, and it's, oh, we didn't realize this, we didn't think of this. Can you get us out of the shit? And it happens quite a lot. And when it's at that stage, it's incredibly expensive. Where if all these issues can be captured by a digital tool very early on, it's incredibly cheap and very easy to fix.
Whilst I know you'd like me to disagree with Martyn,
Come on, Neil, come on.
He's talking common sense, and having, as I say, just come out of a project collaboration SaaS platform, I think one of the biggest things is if we can embed regulation, I'll bring that horrible word in, regulations. If regulations can be set out more clearly by the industry, if everyone has a similar way of applying those regulations, because we often run into the fact that we're following the regulations, but the person who's signing off has a different perception of what they say, because it's not that clear, and we can embed those into technology, then that can simplify things and stop a lot of problems occurring. Because, as Martyn correctly said, if we can get the information into the system and flow it through and everyone can see it from the earlier stage, one, we can pick the problem up earlier, but then we can use technology to actually understand where previous projects went wrong and not to do it again, because too many times the same problems occur on development after development because there's a lack of record of where it went wrong, there's no way to actually dive into it. There's so many different parties involved in a construction project that actually trying to do a sort of a retro with them afterwards is impossible. So we need to capture that information, learn from that information, and use the systems to ensure that we're not planning or doing the same thing on project B after we've done it on project A. And that's where technology can fit in really well.
Thank you, mate. We hear from leaders that digital tools often create more work rather than less. Training, new systems, new behaviours. What needs to change so digital transformation fits how people actually work instead of interfering with it?
I would say, coming back to, I think one of the first points I said, it's got to be seen as an operational change, not a technology project. Technology is a tool to fix a business issue. That's the crux of what it's there for. We wouldn't spend money on it otherwise, we shouldn't. If it's seen as an operational problem, then we need to look at how we operate, how it's got to be led from the front. We can't do it through a committee, and we've got to look at where we currently are and understand that. And I'll keep coming back to the same thing. If we don't understand where we actually are, how the hell can we change anything? If you haven't got the foundations in place, whatever you built will fall over. And I've seen it again and again and again where people try and do a change without actually understanding, okay, what is the output we are looking for from this change? If the output is X, are we running the right thing in place? Have we got the right processes there? If we haven't, we're just going to try and digitise something that's already broken. And that happens again and again, and that just adds more and more problems. So we've got to understand where we are in the first instance. Leadership have got to stop trying to make decisions without understanding their business from back to, as Martyn said, back to ground level. The people who do the actual work, people on the coalface, because they know the problems you're running into. They know where things work or where they don't work. And if you take account of that and you've got an openness with it, and it's run as a proper organisational change, but with leaders making quick, fast decisions, not trying to do things by committee, because that never bloody works, then we'll move forward and it will help organisations embrace it better and get a far better output from it.
Can I go off piece and tell a wildly different story, but which will link back to this? So,
Once upon a time.
Yeah, once upon a time. It's kind of talking about this, what we're talking about now, we're just using an example that's nothing to do with construction. I used to actually own a hair salon, and it's true. That's why I've got such nice hair. It's terrible. It's terrible, it's fine. And obviously we would have products in the salon that the stylists wouldn't sell because they didn't like them, they didn't get behind them. And I think it would be very easy for us to look as the people that ran the salon about which one gives us the best profit margin to sell. But we worked with the stylist and said, okay, what do you want? What products do you like? And essentially they chose what we would stock and sell. And because they felt involved and they were behind it, first of all, it met their needs. And because they felt part of the project, they would actively sell it and promote it for us. And I think that links back to most companies. If you're going to make changes that affect your day-to-day, you want the people that it's going to be affected to really buy into it, and it to be for them to understand why the change is happening, but to be part of that change. So you really get behind it, use it, and it really benefits you. And I think a lot of time that's yeah, we've kind of said that disconnect doesn't happen very often.
I think a good example was a couple of years ago, I was working in an organisation. The UK subsidiary had lost about 1.2 million the year before. And having looked at it, I set out the goals and objectives, but then brought the team in and said, okay, this is where we need to go. You know what's happening. Here's, go away, look at the plans and actions and come back with those. Challenge the objectives if you want. Let's talk it through, and we did. We changed a number of systems in there because they came back and said, actually, we need to change the CRM system, we need to change this, and this, and that. We need to change these areas in it. That subsidiary turned around from losing 1.2 million to making a 116k profit the following year. Now, that was not down to anything I did, that was down to a team understanding where we wanted to go and being empowered, embracing the change, and then really driving them forward. And that, I think, shows where if you actually engage people properly, understand real problems that are in place, then you can turn things around and make progress very quickly.
As automation and intelligent support tools mature, where do you see the biggest near-term opportunities to remove bottlenecks without requiring major system change?
I think this comes back to that wasn't me. I think things come back to looking at those areas that take a lot of time. It comes back to that ROI of time versus benefit. And I think there's an awful lot of activities at the moment that can be automated well using tools, especially through things like AI, that can move a lot of information forward. I think an example of that is a conversation I had a few weeks ago with a company. Their customer service team was spending probably about 3 or 4 hours before a regular customer catch-up, pulling all the information together, looking at where churn risks were, looking at where potential upsells were, and trying to pull that data together. Now, that data all sits within their systems. That's a complete waste of a customer service person's time. And they actually went away and wrote, it hasn't been embraced by the company yet, but they've written themselves an AI program that now pulls together a report for every meeting set in their calendar for a customer catch-up. So they now spend their time just reviewing that report and looking at the best ins for each of those areas. So it's now turned dead time, because let's face it, pulling a report together for 4 hours, you haven't actually read the data, you've just constructed some data. So you might have picked something up while you were doing it, but you're still on the back foot. By having a report put in front of you that highlights all those key areas, you can now be proactive as a customer service person or not. And I think there's so many of those areas that sit within a lot of businesses that instead of people having to process information, put something together for them to then read, can be presented to them, and they can actually optimize their time in a benefit.
So I think it'd definitely be interesting to know from some of our guests how you use AI in your business and how it's been effective. But I think for us, it was looking at what AI was really strong at, and I think we found that AI was really strong at moving data from here over to here, to one system to the other. So a good example from our business, we get when the first point of contact, customers will email us in schedules. Schedules could be big Excel document, it could be PDFs, it could be annotated photos. It's then one of the estimators that has to go through all that information to understand what's being asked and then translate that into our ERP system. That gets processed and that gets translated back into a spreadsheet that then goes back to the customer, so that that person isn't really adding any value. They're just moving information around from one place to the other. And it's where AI has been really effective. So we've designed a tool that can read and understand the customer's email and just do that translation. So we're not asking our customers to send the information in a different way. We haven't had to change our ERP system. We've just used AI to remove that layer of translation, which has been really effective. So it means our people can actually do value-adding work, spend more time on the phone with customers, helping them, rather than just moving stuff around from system to system.
Last question in this area. Regulation often gets blamed for slowing progress. But is the real issue the rules themselves, or the way the different standards and requirements interact across the value chain?
So I have a love-hate relationship with regulation. So it's the biggest thing that slows us down when we're trying to launch a new product. But I do think it's a good thing, and I think for businesses that are trying to do put out high-quality products or do high-quality work, it helps maintain those standards. And I think where it falls down, or where I think it creates issues, is in the overlap and sometimes the grey, murky areas that are open to interpretation. So we've had lots of examples where slightly more complicated products have several different standards related to them, and those standards overlap in some areas, conflict in some areas, or have areas that are very ambivalent and could be interpreted a few different ways. It's caught us out once or twice where we've been testing a product and the test standard has some areas that are up for interpretation, and we've had it tested, and then when we've needed an assessment, the assessor said, "Oh no, I interpret this standard differently. The test you've done is wrong." We're like, "No, we've tested to this standard. No, it's wrong." So it can be a difficult argument to have, and it can be a very costly argument to have, and it's quite common in standards. They're not written for people to read, very complicated, and I think it's somewhere where potentially digital tools can help if those documents are more machine readable. So I think we said before about compliance, if it's machine readable and it's written in a more harmonious and holistic way, like those crossovers and those grey areas can be, first of all, seen early on, So you can have those discussions before you get down the road and someone says, no, I disagree with how you interpreted that.
Yeah, coming in from a slightly, I completely agree with you, and I think from the perspective of construction, I think when Part L came out, I think it's all done for the right reason, but I think part of the problem with standards also is, one, the clarity, as you've already mentioned, but secondly, how well it's publicised, and how well it's put across to not just large organisations, but to SMEs as well. I think digital tools come in very, very well for this type of area, because I think looking at Part L, that could be built into your workflow process. So if you had your project plan through it, you couldn't, if it's digitised, then you can't move to the next area until all your Part L's in place, or your geolocated photos are in place. They're all signed off, you move on, that saves you rework. But there were a number of instances, I think, where communication for the government around the standard wasn't to the right level. And yes, SMEs and smaller construction organisations have a duty to be up to date with them, but a number weren't. And I came across two or three companies that had continued to build and completed post-Part L deadline, who then couldn't sell their product from that side. But I think where the technology really came in well was, the people we saw embrace it well was those that built that into their process. The technology helped them keep that control and ensure they were in place before they sealed up on the first place.
So now we'll move to the closing statements. It's been very informative, thank you. What trend or technology in 2026 will genuinely help transformation, and what is kind?
Strangely, I think for me, the biggest thing is leadership actually engaging with their teams better, communicating better, and understanding the problems in place before embracing technology. I don't think that's a 2026 problem. I think that's a problem for many years, but it's something that needs to change. I think the focus I think the adoption of, especially around AI in businesses, is to bring in efficiency, is to look at those areas where people are wasting time and they can be more productive. That doesn't mean that you bring it in to reduce the workforce, you just make your workforce that you've got far more productive where you are. Okay, it may save you from taking more people on, that can help your bottom line, but I think it's looking at those areas where you can really pick up long-term tasks that have very little ROI to the organisation and make your workforce's life easier.
Is anyone here from Harmony Fire? No? Great. So this company that I'm not going to name, they developed this, it's an Internet of Things sensors for compliance monitoring in fire doors. Very, very, very clever idea. It solves a lot of problems. Currently in fire doors in buildings, they have to be assessed every 6 or 12 months, I think. It's an expensive process because it's someone who charges a very high day rate has to go around your building and check all your doors. So this device goes into your door and frame and kind of monitors your door gaps. So it's, if your hinges have failed, if the door is bore warped, really, really, really good idea. And I'll ask the ab lawyer trying to copy them. So I think that's fantastic, and that's going to eventually be quite transformative. However, your second point of your question was, what do you think is hype? At the moment, I would also say that is hype. I don't know if any of you have been in like a high-rise building at any stage in construction and tried to make a call. The building seemed to be the perfect Faraday cage, so there's no mobile signal. If there's Wi-Fi, it's terrible. And so you can have all these devices, and it can't be expected that like hundreds of devices would be hardwired in, or that there's still that network question of how they communicate, how they would communicate to a main server so that data could be monitored. And I think that really hasn't been properly thought out when there isn't a good solution to that. So that's why I'd say it's potentially transformative, but I think right now it's still quite overhyped.
So last question. What's your best advice for leaders who want digital transformation to finally stick this year? If you touch on governance if possible, you might include that.
think for leaders who want it to stick, it's very much around having the right governance in place. And I'll come back to the statement I made earlier. If you try and do transformation via committee, then you will spend a lot of money going nowhere. I think it's got to be structured properly. It's got to be driven from the top, but with an understanding from the bottom. There's got to be proper governance around how it's brought in. AI, you need to treat it, there's got to be guardrails around how it's used, and I think that's when it comes into its own. There's got to be control factors around it, and you need to look at how you embrace those and put those control factors around it, but use it in the right way to optimise your business in the best way with those controls.
Yeah, so for me, it's the 3S. So simplify, standardize, and structure in terms of how the data is. I think I look back to a question before. We very often have architects who will do a job for, and then 12, 18 months down the line, when the next phase is coming from the same architect, they will be asking for almost the exact same thing, but slightly different. And it's about, clearly they don't communicate from one project to the next, but if that was standardized, you'd be paying half, because it wouldn't be two bespoke different jobs. So I think once stuff is simplified, so it means your problem, you know what the problem to solve, and then the standardization just makes applying digital tools much, much easier and less complicated. Oh, and I think people need to understand that like digital transformation isn't a trend. It kind of is here to stay, so we need to deal with that and move on.
And I think one of the biggest things, coming back to that, it is change management, and it's got to be looked at as its own area of that. I don't know how many project plans I've seen with transformation and change management put one deal online, and that's it. It needs to be looked at about what that change management is, what's the detail behind it, who do we engage with it, who understands it, how we communicate it.
Thank you both for those insights. That's really good. We'll open up to the floor now. Just one question per panelist. That's all we have time for.
From chemical materialists, demo audits have a marketplace for reclaimed materials. I'm not actually from construction. I've always worked in SaaS, but I'm curious to know, just looking at the headline behind you, why do you think construction specifically is disproportionately affected by transformation stalling?
I would say, having been in construction for a number of years, I would say farming and agriculture, I'd say construction's probably been the least technology engaged industry around. I think going back to my history, the organisation I worked for, the comment was always, the money we've got is best spent on land. So if I don't need technology to build a house. Those are the statements I used to run into again and again. Therefore, everything had to be, and there's nothing wrong with that, but everything had to be driven by ROI. So to actually build a team from nothing to a significant number of people, it was an awful lot of ROI statements and around it. So I think there's an understanding, and I think as boards now change as the next level of people coming who are more technology aware, because back 20 years ago, most of the boards in construction were trying to get them to use a mobile phone with enough, let alone understand what a technical system was. I used to have a guy who used to follow the CEO around, trying to help him make calls and use his email, for God's sake. So whilst that understanding wasn't there, I think it was far more difficult. And I think because of the disparate nature and the fact that you've got, as Martyn said earlier, you've got all the design going on, and they've got multiple different work streams with lots of different subcontractors through a site. The question is, okay, how do we bring all that together? Now, it can be done through digital collaboration tools. I put something back in 2012 from that side of things. A lot of companies have been trying to put that in since early 2000s, when the early companies like Skyscraper and so on around. But there's a lot of platforms in place that will do it, but it's getting that why do we need technology? If you can't answer the why do we need it, how is it going to impact the bottom line, then they won't spend money on it.
So I've been going to trade shows for quite a long time, like London Build, and there's a big one in Birmingham. And every year there'll be at least one presentation called something very similar to this, and they'll show a picture of a construction site from the 70s and one today. It's like, it looks the same. It looks the same. Why is this? And I think from working at a smaller company, I think why we haven't really embraced or been slow to embrace it is we've always waiting for a bigger company to adopt something as this is what we use as standard, and then it makes sense for us to do it, to use the same thing. Because you go to these trade shows, there's lots of different technology platforms offering different things for different parts of construction. And if you kind of hang your hat on that, then the industry goes in a different way. It'd be quite an expensive thing to come back from. So I know from working at a small company, that's why we've been very slow to adopt things. It's just waiting for one of the big players to see which way they go, and then we'll follow them.
I think having come out of construction, I think you're in a good place in SaaS, because that's probably been for the last 6 years, and that was a breath of fresh air, actually, to be honest. But I would say that a lot of the learnings coming out of an organisation that runs that tightly have been incredibly useful going forward into SaaS organisations as well. There's a lot of learning from that, because if you are tight on funds, then you do look at where's that pound spent, and that doesn't harm most SaaS organisations that I've been into. Interesting. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Hello, I'm Ben Ward, Field CTO of Kenneally Retail Software. So 2026, digital transformation. Who is the audience and who is the buyer in organisations for digital transformation? It always used to be technologists and tech teams. Is that still the case now when it comes to AI and digital transformation?
I'd say now I've moved out more into, whilst I've worked as a CIO, COO and CFO, I would now say in SMEs, then a lot more of it, a lot of the boards are far more technology aware. It's just directing that into the right area. I think if the buyer is the technology department, I think you're going to run into a problem anyway, because it comes back to the fact that you're trying to run it as a technology project and not a business change project. And whilst it's a technology project, the rest of the companies still look at the tech department. They don't know what we do. Whereas it's got to be, even if it's highly engaged with the tech team, it's got to be business driven with business reasons behind it. From that side of things, so I think in some of the large organisations, you'll still end up having to go to the tech. It'll still be the tech team who'll be looking to buy it, but I think initially, the more successful will be when it's been brought in. The fact is, you will have to engage with those tech teams, because otherwise, that sort of shadow change for digital transformation doesn't work. It can happen, but it's no good. It needs to be engaged, all included, but driven by the business itself.
Are we talking CFO, COO?
I would say CFO, COO.
Can I just give you my experience? So at CELO, I worked at some terrible companies. CELO's a good company. And they really try to empower everyone to make decisions, make suggestions. So from us, it comes from individual teams who are fed up with the current process, and they have done some research and, this product, we like it because, and they'll essentially pitch to the MD why they like it, why they think it's a good thing. So it's been, we're not talking huge things, but there's lots of things that CELO have kind of taken on board that have come from like the project managers who just want an easier life, and this tool really helped them, or like the estimators who are spending so much time with admin. So they like see that idea and essentially pitch it back to the business. And if the business see values, we'll try it. If it works, brilliant. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
It says a lot about your culture, though. I think that says quite a lot about your culture, that people are able to do that. And I think it still comes down to culture within organisations, how many ideas will be fed up and how many ideas will be actually listened to, because whilst people don't feel able to feel like they're being thought of as complaining, the more open your organisation is, the more ideas you'll get, and the better ideas you'll get.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you. So with that, we're closed, and I'd like to thank you for your engagement, attendance. Thank Neil and Martyn for your amazing insights. Thank you both. And now we move on to television shooting, which blends shooting with alcohol. I would encourage you, however, to speak to an AI Centre representative to talk about how many of the points that Neil and Martyn brought up can be addressed by AI Centre, including simplicity and starting with the user. So I encourage you to do that. Thank you very much.